Trump promised Britain a trade deal. We all heard it, right? So where is it? That's the question echoing across boardrooms, factory floors, and Downing Street corridors as British exporters brace for another month of tariffs that were supposed to be gone by now, following what both sides billed as a historic agreement, a word that's getting dangerously overused in trade diplomacy whenever there's a press conference and not much else. Because a month ago, in a transatlantic phone call that came complete with press releases and photo ops, Donald Trump and Keir Starmer announced a breakthrough. The UK and US had reached an economic prosperity deal that would slash tariffs on British exports, especially on high-value sectors like steel, aluminum and cars. But fast forward to today, and not a single container of British steel is crossing the Atlantic without that dreaded 25% levy still firmly attached. Nothing has been lifted. Nothing has come into force. And yet, both governments continue to act as if the deal already exists in the physical universe. Except it doesn't. Because in the fine print of the so-called agreement lies a cold bureaucratic truth. It hasn't been implemented. No timelines, no final paperwork, no certainty. Just vibes, political skin, and one gigantic question mark. British businesses, who've had to live under punishing tariffs since early spring, are understandably getting twitchy. Steel exporters like Tata and All Steels Trading are still paying duty every time they ship goods to the US. Jaguar Land Rover executives told Parliament they've paused and restarted exports, unsure whether they'll be reimbursed, unable to plan ahead, and passing costs to customers because the promised deal remains suspended in diplomatic limbo. And to be clear, the tariffs were supposed to be immediately slashed. That's what Number 10 said on May 8th. But here we are in June, and the only thing that's been slashed is trust in how serious this deal really is. Trump, of course, took to Truth Social to claim everything is working out well, which is a standard response whether if it's trade, golf courses, or global pandemics. But privately, both UK and US officials now admit that things are progressing step by step. Which sounds a lot like diplomatic code for not today, not tomorrow, maybe eventually. And that's where the problem lies. Because if this deal is real, where's the executive order? Where's the timeline? Where are the rules of origin documents that define how British goods qualify for the promised exemptions? Right now, they're either still being drafted or buried in bureaucratic trench warfare between US trade officials and domestic lobby groups. And if you think that's an exaggeration, consider the fine print of Trump's own executive orders. He's already raised global tariffs on steel and aluminum to 50%, except for Britain, which remains at 25%. For now. But even that is conditional. Because if the UK doesn't meet its commitments, including removing China from its supply chains and opening up to American beef, the White House reserves the right to jack tariffs right back up to 50% after July 9th. That's right, this landmark deal includes a veiled threat: comply or pay, which raises another question. Was this even a deal or just an ultimatum with better lighting? And what exactly did Britain commit to in exchange for this partial reprieve? Because sources close to the negotiations say the UK agreed to a raft of concessions, including more market access for US agricultural products, controversial for environmental and customer reasons, and tighter scrutiny of Chinese components in key British industries like electric vehicles. That's not sovereignty. That's a diplomatic high-wire act with one foot already slipping. And back in Westminster, Starmer is walking a careful line. He says the deal is real. He says it's just a couple of weeks away. But businesses, especially in sectors like automotive and steel, are still stuck waiting, bleeding costs, and getting no clarity on when relief will actually arrive. Many now expect implementation to stretch into July, maybe even August. And in the meantime, Jaguar Land Rover says it's being pummeled by tariffs. And Tata Steel says that 25% duty is extraordinarily difficult. And the Conservative opposition is calling out Labour for overselling an agreement that so far has delivered no actual economic benefit. But here's the bigger issue. This saga reveals everything wrong with Brexit-era trade politics. Big announcements, at minimum shaky follow-through, and deals negotiated under pressure, publicized before they are finalized, and sold to the public as done and dusted, when in reality they are just a framework, not a functioning agreement. And that once more creates uncertainty. The worst possible climate for investments, exports, and long-term business planning. British companies need to know whether the tariffs they are paying today will be refunded tomorrow. They need to know whether they are safe to ship goods, price contracts, and build relationships, or whether the rug will be pulled again in 6 weeks when Trump changes his mind. Because in Trump's world, trade isn't just economics, it's theater, it's leverage. And the only thing worse than being on the wrong side of his mood swings is relying on them to decide your international trade policy. So yes, Trump promised Britain a trade deal. But right now, that promise exists only in speeches and headlines. On the ground? Yeah, you can guess. The tariffs are still there. The costs are still rising. And British exporters are still stuck in the same bind they were before the Oval Office phone call. So the question remains, where is the deal? And until it shows up in writing, fully ratified, implemented and enforceable, then the answer is simple. Nowhere. Because until it's done, it's not done. And right now, it's not done.